Hey guys, welcome back to Home Built, and this week I'm going to continue stripping down my L28. Okay guys, as you saw last week, originally I was going to possibly try and take the lazy way out and at least get the car started and running with just the this engine as it was. I sort of thought I could get a compression test by turning it over by hand, but as many have noted, you just can't turn it over fast enough by hand to get an accurate reading. And also this engine, with particularly with all the carbon build-up and the valves and things like that, there's just not a solid enough seal on there to get a decent compression test testing it slowly. If it was fresh and clean, I probably would be able to get a reading on my compression tester, but in this case I can't. So I've made the decision now that I'm going to do a full rebuild on this engine myself here in the garage. So we'll see how it goes, and I might try and give it a little bit more oomph as I go. Okay, so first things first, let's start tearing this thing down further and see what we've got. Alright, first inspection of the engine. There's a bit more corrosion than I would like, and that sump pickup is looking pretty nasty, covered in sludge. But I'm not really going to know much more until I start pulling it all apart. We're working our way through it anyway, so we'll keep going and see what we come up with. Alright, I've pulled this front cover off, and I'm a little bit concerned. I don't know if the camera's picking it up, but it looks like there might be a couple of really fine cracks coming through there. Something I'm going to have to get checked out, because I don't want issues later. So if that's going to be a problem, it's a real pain if it is, because it means I might have to replace this cover. But either way, we'll just keep tearing this down and see how we go. Alright, while I'm here, I thought I'd take you through one of my engine disassembly processes. I started it on the 911, and I'm continuing it here. Basically, I went to my local hardware store. I bought some of these really cheap plastic boxes. And what I've been doing is, as I take something off, I put it in the corresponding spot, and just in order as I go through, and right where the things come from, working my way through the box. Now, when I pulled the 911 apart, the body apart, I put everything in plastic bags, and all those plastic bags are in a box. And that's a terrible way of doing it, I found, because I end up ferreting through the box all the time, trying to find which plastic bag is which, and it ends up turning into a big mess. Some of the bags might open, or they just wear the stuff off, and it's just messy. This is so much easier. They're really cheap. I think they cost me about $5 each. Well worth doing. So, and the other benefit of doing it this way is, okay, if you want to get something specific, you can just go, okay, yeah, I want the crank pulley bolt, right? It's right there. But if you when you're going to reassemble, hopefully you should be able to just go in reverse order straight through this box and put everything back on the way it came off. Definitely highly recommend doing it this way. Don't use plastic bags. In my opinion, this is much, much, much easier, much cleaner, much better. I was just reading the book, and it was saying that before you take the pistons out, particularly if you want to reuse the pistons, and I'm not sure that I will at this stage, but may as well not do any extra damage that I don't have to. But it said to remove the ridge. So around the top of each of these pistons, where the basically where the rings stop when the pistons reach the top, there's just a ring of carbon around the edge. And apparently, if you do force the pistons out without clearing this carbon away first, it can actually damage the ring lands of the pistons. So although they suggest using a screwdriver, a bit hesitant of using that. I've just got an old razor blade and I'm just running around, and it scrapes off quite easily, and just without scoring the boards, just doing it nice and flat and taking this ridge of carbon off, and then the piston should come out reasonably easily. Alright, a lot of you might be wondering what I've been doing here with these weird caps. The book basically says to use a piece of old hose or something to cover up the rod bolts, so that when they're coming off, they don't score the journal on the cam or sort of damage the bore as they go down. I didn't have any hose lying around, but I had a bunch of these caps, which are actually for a caulking gun. Always have a million of them extra lying around, so I just cut a couple of them up to the right size, and they seem to be doing the job. One of the other checks that they were saying in the book is just turn the crank over by hand and see if there's any, if it turns over easily and it's all smooth, chances are it's a nice straight crank, it's not bent and or anything like that, and this is turning quite smoothly and freely, so fingers crossed it's not too bad. That's the bottom end of the engine all disassembled, so it's time for me to head back over and keep going on the bodywork. I want to try and keep going a little bit of engine, a little bit of bodywork every week to keep things from getting stale for me. So alright, so back over to the front cowl panel I've got here, and there's been a really terrible repair right here. It is it's totally atrocious, so that means cut out a patch panel and weld it in, and there's another hole over this side over here. I'm not sure why there would be rust holes here on this cowl panel. It seems like an odd place to get it for me, but I have no idea. I'm going to fix it anyway. After last week, people were giving me all sorts of suggestions on how to not warp panels. I've tried lots of different methods. I've tried cooling with water, cooling with air. Last week I cooled it with air. Somebody did remind me though of an episode of Project Binky. And for those of you who haven't seen Project Binky, I suggest you go and check it out. It's one of the best fabrication builds on YouTube by far. It reminded me that they actually used a 2mm gap all the way around the edge of their weld to give the metal space to go, so when they welded it together. So I went back to using my butt weld clamps, which I actually, for those who followed the 911 build, I built them back when I was doing the rear wheel arches on the 911. Basically what they are, it's just a piece of square tubing with a little metal plate with a hole in it and a wing nut. And I just use a little piece of rod through it. It clamps down onto the piece we're using, and you end up with butt weld clamps like you can see here. So I've used these to try and get everything perfectly flat and level and everything ready to go. So see how we go. Alright, so this panel is done, but it's still warped. I took my time, I did it with the 2mm gaps, I cooled it down after each one, but it's still got a warp here. I mean, it's nothing major, it's something, it's easy to fix, but I mean, this is a particularly thin panel that has been worked a lot. You can see lots of working marks around here, lots of grinding marks and stuff. So this is a particularly flimsy flat panel, but still warped. So anyway, I'll get my dolly out and hammer and dolly and just beat it all flat and move on to the other side. This one was a bit nasty than the other one. I cut the hole a little bit too big, so the gaps are a little bit bigger on this one, which made it a bit extra difficult, particularly along this edge here. You can see it's particularly ugly. Took my time. It still warped the hell out of it. I think most of it is worse because of how thin this panel is. You can see here, decent penetration all the way through. So let's grind it back and move on to the next one. Alright, now I've placed the panel back on the car, I've just discovered a new issue. Is where I've done this repair here, this area is sitting really low. See how that's got this massive dip. It's sitting high at this end and low here. So this cowl panel should actually be pretty much flat, just kick up slightly at the end, and it's got this big curve in it. So I have to pull it off and let's see if I can beat that dent out and get it sitting nice and flat. Alright, I've been having endless problems getting this edge straight. It's popping in and out, so I've taken drastic measures and I've actually done relief cuts in all the way along here, because it was split and it kept cracking and popping. And what I'm going to try and do is I'm going to tie it all completely flat along this edge and then come back in and weld it all up. And I'm hoping it doesn't buckle too badly and I can actually get this thing straight. This whole thing is probably a stupid idea, but the next alternative is actually to remake this edge section. Well, it's not pretty, but it's actually it's finally lined up, so I can leave it and move on to the next thing. I'm hoping this bit will be a simple one. It's just got a few rust holes. This is going to prove to be fun. This is why you wear gloves. I slipped with the grinder and hit myself in the knuckle with the grinder. It was only just a split second, but that's going to leave quite an ugly scab for a while. Idiot! Pretty happy with that repair. Again, slight warping just here. I just need to, be very simple panel, beat up that. And there's a few other places around this where I can see somebody else has done some really bad panel beating, and there's just dents and stuff around it. So I'm just going to go over the top of this front guard and just see if I can get it a little bit a little bit straighter. Well, the front cards and everything is starting to look a lot better, but that's me out of time again, so I guess it must mean it's time for Fun Facts with Mrs. Jeff.
Hi guys. Datsun's very first sports model was built in 1959 and it was called the S211. This was a 988cc straight 4 with 36 horsepower with a 4-speed manual transmission. It was a small roadster based on the Datsun 211 sedan, and it featured fiberglass bodywork influenced by the Chevy Corvette. There are only 20 examples of the S211 made, making it the rarest of all the Datsun models.
Alright guys, again, it's it for another week. I'm happy with the progress I'm making on the panel work, and hopefully next week I can tear into that head and analyse the engine a little bit further and see what condition things are, and then I might be able to start working out what I need to do to build it back up again. So, and guys, if you want to help the channel out, go into the link in the description and you can go to our store and buy some shirts or hoodies. Everything goes to help out keeping these videos coming. And as always, please like and subscribe to Home Built by Jeff, and you can follow me on Facebook and Instagram at the same place. See you guys.
Straight 4 with 36, no, 36, what's a straight, I don't know, actually I don't want to know what a straight 4 is because I don't care enough to know. 36 horsepower, because I'm just saying like noises. This was a 988, this was a 988 straight 4